This is the 501 Coroner Backroads, where the road slows down and the stories are still waiting, right where they've always been. Now let's get going. Hey, it's me, Steve. If you lived in Little Rock in the 80s and 90s, you didn't wait on the evening news to find out what was going on. You checked your windshield. Because if Robert Say McIntosh had something to say, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't subtle, and it wasn't optional. It was sitting right there under your wiper blade for everybody to see. Thousands of flyers, parking decks, public lots, downtown streets. That was his newsroom. That was his printing press, and that was his distribution system. And man, did it work. If your name showed up on one of those sheets, you were the story whether you liked it or not. Say McIntosh wasn't just a restaurateur, he was a political force, a provocateur, and a community figure who understood something early on. If you want attention, you don't ask for it, you take it. And man, did he take it. He staged protests that were designed to be seen. One of the most striking was when he hung himself on a cross outside the state capitol, a visual protest that made sure nobody could ignore what he was trying to say about race and injustice. You didn't have to agree with it, but you were going to see it. He dumped liquor bottles in protest, he disrupted meetings, he inserted himself into the middle of political conversations, whether he was invited or not. And then there were those flyers. I remember one during the gang war era where he called gangs out by name, challenged them, tried in his own way to get their attention and redirect it. I've still got a copy of that. My office sat downtown near several public parking decks, which was Say's prime territory. And when those flyers hit, my staff didn't run from them, they ran to them. They go out and gather them up like evidence and bring them back in, and we would examine them and see what Say had dropped on the city that very day. Who he was calling out, who made the list, what kind of fire he was about to start. At one point, I made one of those flyers myself. That's how much a part of the environment he was. And if you were in public office back then, you paid attention because Say wasn't afraid of anybody. One of the biggest clashes he had was with Ralph Forbes. Now, a lot of people today won't remember Forbes, but back then he was a segregationist political figure tied to the nationalist movement, a group associated with white separatist ideology. And Say didn't just argue with him, he confronted him. In one of the most talked about moments of that time, Say McIntosh physically struck Forbes during a confrontation at a television station. That wasn't staged, that was real. That's how raw things could get. And it didn't stop there. During the Whitewater era, with cameras everywhere and tensions running high, Say also struck a national news producer outside the federal courthouse in Little Rock. Once again, he made himself part of the story, whether the story wanted him or not. Love him or hate him, he was never on the sidelines. So when I tell you that Ralph Forbes later came to see me, that matters. He walked into the coroner's office in the Pulaski County Admin building, sat down, and told me that he and his group recognized me as the only county official that they would recognize. Now that was a moment. Here was a man tied to that movement of hatred, sitting across from me, talking about authority and recognition. And whether he understood it or fully or not, he was reaching back into something very old. Because under Old English law, the coroner wasn't just a death investigator, he was a representative of the crown, a check on the sheriff, a buffer between power and the people. And in that moment, that is exactly how he was treating my office. Not political, separate. History has a way of showing up like that. And Say McIntosh, he lived right in the middle of all of it. He could feed a neighborhood one day and be the lead story on the news the next. He could hand out pies and then hand out flyers that had politicians scrambling. He was unpredictable, controversial, and completely plugged into the pulse of the city. And then time does what time does. The noise fades, the headlines slow down, until one day you walk into a place and it all comes back. I found myself sitting in a small restaurant in North Little Rock over in the Rose City neighborhood on Washington Avenue. Same name on the front, Say McIntosh. And let me tell you something, that wasn't just lunch. That was a time machine. I ordered a turkey burger. Now, I've had plenty of turkey burgers in my life, and most of them are dry enough you need a drink just to get through it. Not this one, baby. This one made me stop and check to be sure it was turkey because it didn't eat like turkey. It was juicy, seasoned right, and that bun was grilled just enough to give it that crisp edge without overdoing it. The fries were hot, not greasy, and they didn't skimp on them. And the lemonade, that hit me, because I remembered it. The same taste from years ago, homemade, not out of a machine. Say knew what he was doing back then. Give somebody that first glass, and they'll by God be back to buy more. While I'm sitting there eating, I'm looking around. The walls, the tables, covered in photos, old news clippings, and some of those very flyers we talked about. This wasn't in a museum. This was right here where people are eating lunch. And I start remembering not just the headlines, but the feeling of those days, the tension, the noise, the politics, the personalities. And all of it was tied to one man who made himself impossible to ignore. I spent about an hour there just taking it in. Then I met his grandson, Esau, a sharp young man, professional, attentive. But what got me was listening to him take an order on the phone from an elderly customer. I'm sitting there trying not to laugh because you could hear it, that same connection to people that his granddaddy had. Maybe a little different style, but those same roots. The place isn't big. It's maybe just 4 tables. There's a drive-through, though. You could miss it if you weren't looking for the place. It's orange, so it's easy to see, and it sits right there about Washington and Lynch. But if you don't go inside, you're missing the whole point. Because inside, that's Little Rock history on the walls. Say McIntosh was a lot of things. Some folks loved him, some folks didn't, but nobody ignored him. And sitting there, eating that burger, looking at those walls, you realize something. He's still there. He's just not in the noise anymore. But he's in the legacy, family, food, community, and a story that still gets told one plate at a time. I'm Steve Navoychek, and this has been a 501 Coroner Backroads memory, where a whole piece of Little Rock history is still being served up wrapped in a perfect turkey burger, lemonade, and a piece of sweet potato pie. Y'all be kind to each other, okay?